McGrath, your host. Thank you, Gary Hendershot, the Alternative Energy Hour, every Monday night, 5 o'clock West, 8 o'clock East. For the first hour is Gary, and he always brings on interesting guests and interesting topics, and I greatly appreciate his participation in this program. Joining us here in just a minute, we got a guy who I was on his, we got a guy, that's real pro right there. We've got a guy who I was on his program recently, and I think it's going to be a good time. I mean, we had good chemistry, as it were, on the air when I was on his podcast, and we had fun, and we're going to have fun tonight. So if you're not listening, and if you're not listening, start listening. If you're listening and not in the chat room, I want you to get in there because he is his website's the Preparedness Podcast. So guess what we're going to talk about? Preparedness. Matter of fact, I'm looking at one of the articles he's got up on his site now about hyperinflation. Series Part 2, Preparing for Hyperinflation Part A. It sounds like a government plan. Part 2, Part A. We're going to get into hyperinflation. We're going to get into current events. But I really want to take questions from you guys in the chat. If you're listening live on the Rinse Network, then please call in if you have questions for myself or Rob at 877-342-6673. I'd like a lot of participation tonight. So, guys, head into the chat. We'll get rolling here with Rob in just a second. So, the first thing that I wanted to cover before we get into preparedness is an observation that I've came to, or that I made over this past weekend. We have the first debate coming up here in two days, Wednesday, I believe. And I keep trying to find the gist of where the mainstream media, where the powers that be are taking the conversation. Is it going to be gun rights? Is it going to be gay rights? Is it going to be, some other distraction that we're not seeing right now? And it seems to all the world, we're almost here. I mean, we're in October and elections the next month. Regardless of how you feel about who's going to be the president or not, it really doesn't matter. But look, I'm still sticking with my prediction. Obama's going to win this thing. We're going to have a divided Congress, and we're going to go, we're going to go into more of the exact same that we have right now, which is complete, total, tyrannical banker control, period. That's it. However, the conversation right now is being drawn towards the fear, governed by crisis, governed by terror, financial terror, of the fiscal cliff. I'm uploading a video right now that I shot just before the program that speaks to this. Fiscal cliff. This is the argument. This is the latest terror tactic. This is the latest governed by crisis event to enter into the lexicon. And there's a real reason for it, because we are going to hit this thing. But let's look at where we're at and how we got here with this fiscal cliff. First of all, for those of you listening who don't know what it is, let's break that down. The fiscal cliff is something that was given to us when 535-member body of Congress was basically written off and a super Congress was put into place. The super Congress was supposed to come up with a sustainable deal that reduced our deficit, reduced our spending, and in true Washington, D.C. fashion, they gave themselves an out, a cover, these automatic triggers. If a deal couldn't be done on January 1st, 2013, automatic triggers would kick in, and our world as we know it would come to an end. At least this is how it's being sold to us with fear. Now, the powers that be, these elite in Washington, look at the engineering on this. Look how beautifully, masterfully orchestrated this is. You have 535 members of Congress that, in one foul swoop, can be proven to be completely dysfunctional and ineffective. Therefore, the message is representative government does not work. A republic can't work. There's too many points of view, too many opinions, too much argument. There's too much arguing going on. When we whittle it down to even a super Congress, they still can't get anything done. So we'll do these automatic triggers. The triggers, like I said, gives them political cover to let the baddest, most worst things that could happen to the average person on the street, Jane and Joe Sixpack, these bad things can happen, and nobody in D.C. has to take the blame. The president doesn't have to take the blame. Congress doesn't have to take the blame. Wall Street doesn't have to take the blame. It wasn't their fault. It was automatic triggers that kicked in. We had no choice. The triggers. We had the triggers to deal with. So this is what we're facing in this debate going into the last month of this ridiculous kabuki theater, is the fiscal cliff. Well, it's for a reason that this is going to maintain a high topic of conversation even after this election. It's because the solution to the fiscal cliff is more of the same, and they want to continue this game that we've been immersed into. The solution to the fiscal cliff is more debt. Raise the debt ceiling, spend more money that we don't have, give more money to institutions on Wall Street and pretend that the economy is recovering. More and more and more debt piled onto the people of this country, which is tantamount to saying, that you guys can flip the bill for all this failure. And in fact, we're going to govern from the Federal Reserve and from these banks because we know how to do it now. All we have to do is cry wolf, cry fire in the theater, and you guys will bend over and take whatever we tell you you're going to take. This is where we're at. But the fiscal cliff that they're talking about, again, we find it another misnomer from Wall Street, from Washington, D.C., from the Federal Reserve. They're calling QE3. We know it isn't. It's QE to forever. A misnomer is a fiscal cliff that we're about to go off of. The truth is, we went off the fiscal cliff a long, long time ago. 46,946,510 people on food stamps in the United States of America in October 2012. We've went off the fiscal cliff. 1,320,194 bankruptcies so far this year. 881,527 foreclosures in 2012. $742 trillion in currency and credit derivatives floating around this planet. 16 trillion, 73 billion, $786,500,000 is our national debt. We went off the fiscal cliff a long, long time ago. We're not about to face it. We're about to see the impact by being pushed off this cliff, this suicide by fiscal cliff that happened a long, long time ago. Don't believe this hype coming out of the mainstream, coming out of Washington, that we need to be governed by crisis, because that's exactly what it is, hype. And when we are governed by crisis, we end up losing our freedom, losing our sovereignty, losing the ability to have our own destiny within our own control. It is given to someone else, period. All right, that's the nutshell of the video that will be posted later on that topic. I do point out in it that the Federal Reserve was so happy with the a few current congressmen and women that it wrote thank you letters for obstructing representative government and blocking the Federal Reserve audit legislation. But you can check that out in the video. Let me introduce our guest, because as usual, I burned up most of this segment ranting. Rob, the Emergency Preparedness Podcast. Am I saying that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Rob, thank you to the. Yep. Hey, thanks for having me on your program the other day, and thank you very much for being on my program.
Charlie, I really appreciate you coming on my podcast, because one of the things I don't get into a lot is politics and the whole how the government is really kind of sapping our freedoms away, because I really focused on preparedness, and even though a lot of this stuff is going on, I don't really touch on it. And I think with what's coming up with this QE3 to infinity, with the hyperinflation that I think that's going to bring, and the other aspects we have, I thought it was really important to have you on and be able to give some sort of perspective to people who may not have that perspective yet, so they had some sort of reference of why I keep talking about, hey, this is going to happen. Hey, you got to watch out for inflation and stuff. So right. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I think we had a great time, and I know it went way longer than you probably anticipated.
Well, well, no, I was fine. I don't mind. I can talk all day long, and in fact, I think it ended up being two parts. But it was.
Yeah, I broke it up to two parts, and yeah. Otherwise it was like an hour and a half.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. When we come back, the preparednesspodcast.com. I'm saying thepreparednesspodcast.com is the website, and for some reason I can't say the word prepare on air or in commercials. Thepreparednesspodcast.com is Rob's website. We're going to be back with him, more Wide Awake News Radio. 3.5 minutes. Hang tight, guys. Guys, the Preparedness Podcast is a program I was recently on, and thanks to my friends at I'm going to get in trouble, byemergencyfoods.com, Chris Atkins, and he's probably laughing because he's either listening to this or he will be later. Chris Atkins introduced me to Rob at Preparedness, the Preparedness Podcast, And like I said, it was fun interview. It was supposed to be a half hour, I think, and it ended up being like 7 hours. It was
not quite, but close.
Okay, I'm exaggerating. And that's the other thing we were doing before the program tonight. We were talking about exaggerations because in alternative media, everybody's a one-upper. That's the deal. And you know what? I don't care who knows this. Everybody's a one-upper. If I say I had 10 hits on a YouTube video, then by gosh, the next guy had 20, and so forth and so on. So it is going to be a night of fun and talking prep, but it's also going to be a night of extremely grandiose exaggeration. Okay, so when I was on the break, I was noticing we have 5,200,000 people in the chat room. If you want to join the 5,200,000 we have in chat, please go to wideawakenews.com, click on the big radio microphone, and you can join the folks in chat, and we will be pulling questions out of there for Rob of the Preparedness podcast for the balance of the program. Rob, tell me first of all a little bit about the Preparedness podcast. What do you do there? How'd you get into it? And your motivations or such.
Well, the motivation has always been to help people. I've always liked teaching people. I always liked training them, since basically the Marine Corps, and then afterwards, I always kind of liked teaching people. But I was only really good at the training aspect when it was a subject I knew. And I've been interested in preparedness for a long time. And back in 2008, I said, there's not a lot of podcasts out there that talk about preparedness. Hey, I called a couple of friends, said, let's do a podcast. And like, okay, sure, great. So it was kind of a hobby, and I did that from basically November of 2008 to August of 2011. And I was trying to do a podcast every week, and as a hobby, it became really tough because, as the economy and the recession, I have a day job and I had to do some side work in order to make ends meet. And I started doing them like on my way to work in the morning, as I'm driving. And that really wasn't what I wanted to do. So I stopped for almost a year. And then, when my wife and I were looking for, other revenue streams, I showed her, I said, hey, look at these downloads. I really haven't put out a podcast for a year, but look how many people are still downloading. She's like, oh, that's amazing. This is what we should do. So, I make no bones about it. I'm trying to make it a revenue stream. I mean, it's not going to replace my day job at all, but one of the things, I try to tell people is with the economy that's coming, you should have multiple streams of income, because if you lose your day job, at least you still have some income coming in. And again, this isn't going to replace my day job by any means, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do this, and we're trying to look at a couple other things to just kind of, be prepared, because the way the economy is going with this quantitative easing, which is nothing more than, quite honestly, money for bankers, it's going to inflate the dollar and devalue the dollar and inflate the whole economy, so that prices are going to be going up.
That's right. I mean, and that's one thing that this audience. Wait a minute, Charlie. What does the guest feel are the signs of collapse is imminent? So write that down, Rob. We'll get to that one. But you said that you appreciated me coming on to hit some of the economic stuff, political stuff. And when I was on your program, when I was on there for that 48-hour marathon recording that we did, it was awesome, by the way. And I'm happy to see that you're up for an Emmy.
Yes, that'll be next week
for that. All right, I'm going to be serious for the rest of the program. When I was on your program, I said, you know what? I need to get more guys like you on my program, because we do talk about the economic, geopolitical situation and how things are deteriorating, but I don't do justice to the topic of preparation. Now, it used to be when I was just doing YouTube videos, I would just tell people that, look, there's plenty of good folks out there talking about prep and making videos on it, or having podcasts or radio programs. And, I'll give out names of folks to go check out. But now that, the show has moved from an hour to 2 hours, and more people are watching on YouTube, And as we were talking during the break, more and more people disseminate information from different formats and different venues. I think it is important to interject, these topics. Your audience needs to know, okay, I'm prepping, but why? I can hear about Federal Reserve, gold, silver, Wall Street scumbags and that kind of thing, but really, what's going on that is going to lead to a situation where I need to be prepared, prepped, which leads to the question that somebody put in chat, what are the signs that are imminent? If we're more well-rounded in our information, I don't have to be an expert. You said you were a sailor, correct?
Marine.
Yeah, that's what I said, sailor. So when you were, so you have some military background. I don't have to be a Marine. I was in the Army, that's why I'm giving you grief. And I do. Yeah. You don't have to be a Navy SEAL, or you don't have to be an expert on survival in order to survive an upcoming crisis. But you certainly need to touch on these topics and have a game plan in mind, or have a peripheral knowledge of these basic common sense skills. And that's what we're going to talk about with Rob. Man, we went through another break already. We're going to talk with Rob of the Preparedness Podcast and take your questions out of the chat. And if you want to call in, 877-342-6673. We're going to take this break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Hang tight. Back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host. Our guest is Rob from Preparedness, the Preparedness Podcast. You can find his website just by typing in thepreparednesspodcast.com in any search engine, and it'll take you right there. Check it out. A lot of good information there. We do have a couple callers on the line, and we kind of broke down the need for crossing in this genre, crossing between sharing of information. Share your information that you are an expert in, or that you're passionate about. Yours is preparation. Mine, obviously, is economics and politics. But it is important that we cross over and have this basic knowledge. Especially in preparedness, we need a basic knowledge of how to take care of ourselves. If suddenly your ATM card isn't working, or you're stranded with the cash that's in your pocket, what are you going to do? How can you get prepared for that kind of event?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what would be great, because I think people, not only physical preparation for emergency preparedness and stuff, but it'd be really good if we had a historian that would come out and be able to explain money, what money is, why we use money instead of a barter system now, the history of America, what the Constitution is, where it came from, why it's great, the perspective on that, as well as what you do and what I do. So, because I think the more you know, it's like a shopper, just to dumb it down here. If you're a well-informed shopper, then you shop smarter, and you actually become a better client or a better customer for those people who sell better products.
Yeah, and your product is one that you really don't need to know. I mean, you need to be educated on why we're in the position we're in, and you're talking about knowing the history of our nation, knowing the history of money. Knowing the history of systems that worked on money that wasn't issued in debt, and what we have now, that's all important. So we can, inevitably, when this mega collapse occurs, we can have people that knew the cause of it, the true cause of it, not the manipulated propagandist cause of it. But more importantly, I think right now is the ability to have people that can teach us what we need to do in order to prepare for these, for an oncoming crisis, or, disasters, man-made or otherwise. Because, even if we're all wrong in this thing, even if there's not a planned global collapse coming, guess what? You can be rest assured of something. A hurricane, earthquakes, natural disasters, all of those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's for almost every man-made or technological disaster that could happen to us, there's an equal counterpart on the natural side. For example, EMP has been pretty popular as far as a topic that people are interested in. And, our power grid could go down because of an EMP attack. But our power grid can also go down from a coronal mass ejection from the sun that has nothing to do with terrorism.
Right.
It isn't just the technological issues that faces. However, I think a lot of people are looking at the economy, especially since the recession hit several years ago. I think that really woke up a lot of people because we're seeing a huge increase in the number of people who are basically saying, you know what, something's not right. I feel it's not right. This is not good. I see what's happening. I think maybe I should be prepared. And the people that were kind of sort of prepared are getting even more prepared. And I think that that's what I'm trying to help with. There's a lot of good sites and got a good podcast out there with some information, and I'm just trying to just be one voice in the forest that's trying to help people get prepared.
Yeah. Well, I hear you. I'm doing the exact same thing. All right. I'm going to, the guys who've been calling, or the guys calling on hold, we only have 2 lines available, and they're both full. And if you call in, you're going to get your question asked on the air of Rob. So I'm going to go first to Splurge. Caller Splurge. It must be Splurge in the chat room. Splurge, thank you very much for calling in and participating. What is your question?
Hey, Charlie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Hey, I just had an idea, and he would probably know more about this than I would. I've already got one of those, like, Berkey water filter things where you pour it in the top and it drips down to the bottom.
Yep.
And, you know, like, if it came to going to the river and getting a bucket full of muddy water, I want to make a pre-filter out of, like, a bucket with charcoal in it. And I was just wondering, as long as it's not, you know, like when you get charcoal, it's the briquettes.
Right.
As long as it's not the kind that's soaked in lighter fluid, would that be okay to use if you kind of crushed it and maybe put some sand in there? I mean, because I'm thinking, like, if your Berkey thing gets clogged up, then you're really going to be screwed, you know?
Yeah, you're thinking about, so you're gonna take a windsock or something linear, tubular, fill it with sand, and then maybe some crushed or some charcoal briquettes that are not soaked in fluid, so you could, or in lighter fluid or any other chemical, so you can filter out your pond water and then dump it into your Berkey and then filter it even further. Correct?
Yeah, to make it last longer. Does he think that's a good idea?
Rob, is that a good idea? You heard the question?
I did hear the question, and pre-filtering the water before you put it through any filter is going to make that filter element last longer. I don't think you actually have to go through a charcoal filter. That might be better used if you were trying to make a makeshift water filter. But if you had, say, several layers of T-shirts and you poured the water through it, and the slower the water goes, the more particulate matter it's going to take out, and the clearer and the cleaner the water is just from that, you know, T-shirt filtering or coffee filter or whatever you have to basically strain the physical debris that's in the water, is going to make your Berkey last even longer. Those filters will last even longer. For example, as a test, I ran my Berkfield. I have the British Berkfield with the white candle elements. I ran it for an entire year. We stuck them in the kitchen, and we took the tap water, we ran it through it, and I know it's tap water, but it made that tap water taste way better than coming out of the tap. And I didn't have to clean it at all. It didn't slow down the filtration at all, and that's because the water is clean. So I don't think you have to go as far as a charcoal filter, but if you just, you know, your shirts, your T-shirts, your cotton T-shirts, or any sort of straining material you have is going to it's going to make those filters last a long time. And that's not just for the Berkfield. That's for any water filter. You got a Katadyn or an MSR or whatever. The cleaner water you can filter through it, the longer the filter will last.
Great question.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you both. And thanks a lot, Charlie. And thanks for trying, at least with our business venture with the underwear. But, oh well.
Was that okay? That was yours. Okay, I thought so. I'm hoping, you know what, and we're rapidly running out of time, but thanks for sending me that stuff. And I'm going to tell everybody real quick. He sent me one T-shirt, that had a picture of Obama, and it was the Lion King, like the movie, but it was lion as in not telling the truth. But the greatest thing he sent me was a pair of briefs, cotton briefs, that said, what was it? Got probable cause? On the front of it. So, and we had the banner up for a long time. I'm hoping you got some hits out of that.
I appreciate that, Charlie, but I'm afraid we didn't.
Okay, well, Well, it was a noble effort, and I thought it was hilarious. So thank you for calling in.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
You betcha. You bet you. Thank you. And Steve, we have Steve from Oregon, but I'm going to hold you because we only have about a minute before the break, and I want to ask you a question on this filter. Because he asked about charcoal. Now, a charcoal filter, we've all heard of that. I mean, it does a great job at cleaning water. Is the charcoal in a bag of Kingsford, that's not treated with any chemical to fast start or anything else? Is that doable? Can I use that for a makeshift filter?
Well, the truth of the matter is that the charcoal that you use in your grill is very poor grade charcoal. It's great for burning, but it's not so good for filtering because what you want to use is what's called activated charcoal, and the word activated doesn't seem to mean anything, but what it means is that the charcoal has been kind of perforated, and it's got tons of little microscopic pores in it, and that adds to the surface area of the filtering material for charcoal, and that's why activated charcoal works so well. A bag of briquette, you could probably do it, but it would take way more, and even then I would probably still boil it.
Right. Okay. We're going to be back with Rob. Great question, and I could probably just go off with other ideas on water filtration, but we got 2 more callers on the line, so we're going to go to them on the backside of this break. The Preparedness Podcast. Rob is our guest. We're going to be back in 3 minutes, guys. Hang tight. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host. We're having fun during the break talking about critical comments that come in on enunciation, and I am the worst. For mispronouncing words on occasion, and I mean, you just got to get a thick skin. Sometimes you say Pacific when you mean specific. Sometimes you can't say the word prepare, and I have a difficult time with prepare. I don't know why, but I do. And I'm not going to burn up a bunch of time because we have 10 minutes left. We have Steve from Oregon who's on hold, and we also have Richard, who's been holding for quite a while too. And I apologize to Rob because I didn't tell him we were going to take callers tonight, but now he knows, so let's keep rolling. Steve from Oregon, thank you very much for holding and participating in the program. What is your question, sir?
Charlie, and I'll be quick because I understand the situation. Your linguistics are awesome. I just have a different point of view on the preparedness. And you know what? I prepare because it's fun. I get other people where they tear up their lawns or something a little bit, and they go, wow, it was just grass. Now I got green and red vegetables all growing.
Great point.
And it's fun. And if I can get other people, some people can't shoot and stuff, so I'll invite them out where I can, and they have a blast. And all the things, and my son, and my daughter, I go, man, here's some tools. You got to fix it yourself. And they will call me and go, hey, Dad, I fixed it myself. It feels good. And that's what my point is. The preparedness isn't about being afraid of the powers that be and what they're doing. It is about feeling good about yourself.
I agree with that. I totally understand what you're saying. You know what?
You know what? If I can interject real quick here, before I think 2 or 3 breaks ago, you had mentioned, about something about survivors, and what I wanted to say was, if you want to look at survivors, look at our grandparents. Our grandparents did this, and our great-grandparents did this all the time. And I mentioned being prepared because people are getting scared of what's happening and the economy and stuff, but being self-reliant, the caller is absolutely right. You get a huge sense of wellness in yourself when you can do something yourself. You can fix it. You can grow your own food. You can, I have a podcast about, the survival hierarchy of needs, and one of those is basically when you can provide for all these different things for you and your family, there's a great feeling of well-being that you get from it, knowing that I can handle pretty much anything that happens. I can take care of my family. I can take care of my children. I'm not concerned and I'm not worried because I'm prepared.
Amen. You know what? And Steve, you're 100% right. I've said this before that, after years of work and you get in the cube land, you're a cube bot. That's what my brother calls it. He's a cube bot. He goes in and he punches widgets all day long. When you go out and spend a day working with your hands, maybe it's on your house or whatever, or volunteering or whatever, you get this feeling of accomplishment. And it really is something that is good for your health because you're out there, you're doing it, and like you and Rob both said, it gives you this feeling of accomplishment and that you are a provider. You know, if you can fix something that's broken, if you can produce food, this gives you a sense of not only accomplishment but that you can take care of yourself. So great call. Did you have a question on the realm of prep?
No, I'm good. That was all. You can get on. I love you guys very much. Okay, and I'll
right,
call
man.
in again next week.
All right, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate it much, Steve. Thank you. Rob, it is amazing that we are all so compartmentalized. And I don't know if you live in a big rural area. I certainly do not. I have found, though, in traveling, I have traveled all over the country and in Canada, that the more rural areas that you get into, it's funny because, the people that settled these more rural areas had to be more self-sufficient and self-dependent. If a piece of farm equipment broke, they had to know how to weld to fix it. If they were hungry, they had to know how to grow food or kill food or get food in order to put food on their table. So what I've seen is when you look at the West out here, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, these states have Utah, and these states out here have a lot of people that are pretty self-sufficient. And when you look at areas that are big urban areas, man, if it doesn't come out of the corner grocery store or the supermarket, you have no clue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, New York City would probably be the epitome of that exact thing where people live their entire lives and they don't travel more than 5 miles from where they were born.
Right.
Because everything's there. You want you whatever you want, you can just go down to the corner store or whatever it is and get it. And nowadays with the internet, there's very little reason to leave, travel far, which is why they have a very skewed perspective of reality because a lot of it's artificial. They don't have that back to the earth, get your fingers in the soil, I fixed it myself, sort of feeling because, they don't do those things.
That's exactly right. And it also shows you how tenuous the situation is. If you are relying on the internet, electricity, or anything else, the corner store being open or stocked, then that is a potential weak link in your existence. All right, I want, with about 5 minutes left, I want to get Richard on here because he's been holding for quite a bit. Richard, thank you very much for calling in. What is your question for our prep expert, Rob?
Well, really, it's just been a quick input. For the pre-filtering for the water, a pillowcase, a real good quality pillowcase. You can pour the water in that. It's really a good filter, and then you can reverse it to kind of clean it out, and you can use it over and over again or get a couple of them. Second, a big funnel with a chamois would be even a bigger step. And finally, as your guest pointed out, coffee filters. You can buy them by the thousands fairly cheaply, and those suckers really filter water fairly well as for what they do.
Richard,
and my second comment would be sprouts. We really got to get into sprouts. Sprouts are really able to be stored easily and give you the best bang for the buck.
Yeah, as far as energy for a plant, absolutely. I yelled at you there. Have you tried this? Have you went out and tried like taking I don't know, I don't want to say standing water, but dirty water, and then running it through?
I used to have a spring, and what I would do is pre-filter and then run it through a real filter, as they say, a store-bought filter, and you could keep those store-bought filters going for quite a while if you pre-filtered it with the coffee filter idea.
Excellent idea.
Yeah, you know what? I love the pillowcase. That's a good idea. But you know what? I think pillowcases in general are highly underrated as a prep item because they fold up really small. You can put them in your pocket if you had to, but you could put them in almost any pack. And if you had to sleep, then you could stuff it with some clothes or whatever and make a pillow. And in the morning you take it out and you could, throw your dirty clothes in there and go down to the lake and wash them and then filter the water, and you can carry things. And I mean, they're so underrated. Hardly any people carry them around because, we don't think of those things, but talk about a very strong cloth bag that everybody has. So, one of the things I tell people is never throw away your old sheets, your pillowcases, and even if you want to go to like Goodwill or someplace and buy some used ones, not so much using your bed, but because you have this big, huge sheet that has continuous material. Talk about either making clothes or repairing clothes or making a cloth wall if you need a divider in a room because you got guests coming over or whatever. I mean, these things are highly flexible and versatile, and they're just one of those, underrated items that we don't think about.
Yeah, that you don't think about, but is very, very handy. And to your comment on sprouts, sprouts are there's no better food, right? They have the most nutrition of any food. Period, none. So, are you growing a lot of sprouts, Richard?
Yeah, I always have a lot of my meals with sprouts. And to comment, make sure that's 100% cotton, and you can use it for bandages. You can use it for masks if you have a smoke situation or a bad air situation. Yeah. I mean, 100% cotton sheets or pillowcases are the super duper item.
Yeah, no doubt. You just blew my question of sprouts off, though.
No, sprouts. Yeah, I include them as part of my meal normally. You can keep going through your sprout pile, and most of your salad should be partially sprouts. That's the most nutritious aspect of vegetation you should be putting in your body.
I'm looking at this report here. Sprouts have the highest concentration of nutrition per calorie of any food: minerals, enzyme, antioxidants, chlorophyll, and protein. It is a good, outstanding food source. Richard, I greatly appreciate your call and your participation. Did you have any other questions or comments?
No, just keep up the good work. All the information is good and utilizable, and we should always be thinking about how to just use all this stuff in our regular life, not just for survival and preparation, but be ready to use it constantly so that when something bad happens, you're ready to just do what you're normally doing.
Amen, Richard. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. Rob, the Preparedness Podcast, thepreparednesspodcast.com is his website. Rob, when do you normally upload new podcasts?
I try to stay to a schedule, but typically I don't, and that's because the amount of time I take to actually put them together. But I usually put out 2 a week. Obviously, sometime between Sunday and Saturday, I get 2 out there. The latest series I'm working on is hyperinflation. You mentioned at the beginning of the show, and it sounds like a government nomenclature, part 2, part A, because when I thought I was going to do 2 parts and ended up being 3, and I didn't really know how to go back and change them. But lots of information in that hyperinflation. Your listeners should take a look at it because it's really good information and it's something you need to know in order to get prepared for this.
Amen, man. And Rob, thank you very much. That was an excellent program, excellent information. I learned a quick lesson here, though. We need to have you on again, and maybe even a 2-hour segment sometime because
that'd be great.
We had a lot of phone calls, and we barely touched on a lot of topics that I'd like to get to. But for the callers, thank you very much. Great comments, great questions. Rob, thank you very much for joining us. I'll get with Karen. We'll get you rescheduled again as soon as possible. Guys, the website is thepreparednesspodcast.com. Check it out. You can see his latest work and use it as a resource to be prepared for what we all know, hope isn't, but we all know is coming. Please stay tuned for Jeff Rins because he is coming up next. Guys, have a good night. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace.